Hi everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Today we're going to be working on painting and weathering an M1 Abrams tank from Tamiya. Now this video is going to be a little bit different than some of the other ones we've done because this kit we've already built. We have some specialty tracks from AFE Club which are fully workable, which we're going to be using on it. So we're going to be using Vallejo's Merdc camouflage paint to actually build this up. Now this kit comes with a wide variety of paints, which I'll talk a little bit about in a little bit, of all different types of like 70s and 80s types camouflage paint jobs. So we thought this would be a good one to start trying some of these paints out on. These are all the Vallejo Air. I'm kind of excited to try some of those out, so let's get started on it. First thing I want to talk to you guys about is the paint we're going to be using on this build-up. These are the Merdc camo colors from Vallejo, and this is Vallejo's Air. So these are the paints that are already completely ready to be airbrushed with, so we'll be using those on this. The kit itself comes with quite a few different types of paint in there to do all the different variants, from the winter US, snow temperate, some of the different browns and greens, all the way up to just the plain Arctic one. I believe we're going to go ahead and use the winter US and Europe camo on this particular one because it's kind of a cool background for the Abrams. Just want to give you a quick rundown on the kit that we're going to be using as well. This is the Tamiya Abrams kit. It's been out for a little bit of time, but builds up really nicely, very easy to assemble. And the tracks that we're going to be using on this kit are the AFE Club tracks, and these are an individual track that are completely workable. And the way these go together, show you kind of quickly here, is they have these little in connectors that just pop on and pop off, and that's how you use to actually connect the track together. So you'd pop that off and just getting that little tiny piece over on that one, and then on that connect them together and you'll have completely workable tracks. These are very, very nice tracks. A little difficult to get a hold of, unfortunately, in this country, it seems. I always have a hard time trying to find these, but if you can get a hold of them for the Abrams, they are very, very nice and simple to put together. Very little cleanup and just great all around, and it's really nice that they are fully workable. First thing we want to do with these tracks is we're going to put a coat of NATO black across the entire track, and that's going to knock off that kind of shiny fake plastic look to it. We're going to now weather up the tracks. To start with, we're going to use Vallejo's Model Wash, and I like to use the Desert Dust as the fixing agent to attach the pigments. And we're going to start off with our light sienna. It's probably about 60% light sienna, and then we're going to make it a little bit more of like a reddish European earth type with the European earth from Vallejo pigments. So about 40% of that, and I just put them together in a little container and mixed them up. Now we're just going to start off by just dipping the brush into the wash, and that's, like I said, it's going to be our fixing agent. And you can just let it flow all in and out of all the different areas on here. And if it gets on the pad, it's okay, because we're going to wipe off the pads, because the pads, being rubber, usually have a tendency to get a little bit cleaner. But you do want to leave a little bit of dust on it. And we just start dipping the same brush and just kind of working it into and like I was telling you earlier, it's okay if it gets on the pads. A little bit left on behind actually looks pretty good on it. And we're just going to keep going over all the different little areas of the track, letting it build up on there. Now we're going to let this dry for probably about maybe 10-15 minutes, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, before this completely dries, we're going to take a little of the light rust wash, just a couple of drops of it, and then we're going to thin it down with a little bit more of our desert dust. We're going to put this kind of over all of the inside areas. Kind of looks like a little sunburst right there. And what we're trying to do is create a drop or two more of that. It's kind of a light orange, and don't necessarily want it to look like rust. It can be rust if we want, but we want to just put it all in here, and it's kind of like a brownish color. So it could have the appearance of rust or just a lot of extra dirt and grime stuff built up inside. And you see how it just wicks right down the middle of each one of those track pads. Now it may seem a little strong right now just because it is so orange, but once this dries you'll really be shocked how nicely it all blends together. So I'm going to go over the rest of that, and the next step we want to do, and actually I'll just do this little area. We're just going to take an old toothbrush and just down the center of the tracks streak down the middle there, and then just taking a paper towel, wipe off any of the excess, and we're going to let that dry, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's done. And actually, one more step before it completely dries. We're going to use our light sienna and kind of heavily and just blot it across the tops. This is going to kind of fill in the areas, give it a little bit more dirt and mud effect. But you can see not too much of it is sticking to the track pads itself because we've cleaned those off already. Here the tracks are, and they're, I'd say, about 90% dry now. They probably need to dry out a tiny bit more, but you can see the idea that we're going for with the dirt and dust effect, and you can see how the color variation, hopefully. You can still see a little bit of that kind of orangish color all up through the top in there. Now keep in mind too, when you're doing your tracks, there's quite a few different colors and variations that you can use with these. Vallejo makes so many different colors of pigments and washes. You can really just play around and really see what you like based on the area that you're trying to copy. So I'm liking the way these are looking right now. So we're going to let them fully dry, and we're going to start working on the actual vehicle itself now. Okay, we're going to start out the beginning of the painting by putting our black shadow coat over the entire model. And for this, we're going to be using just Tamiya's XF69. I decided to start off with the US Forest Green, and we're going to use this kind of as our base coat to do the entire model with. So let's go ahead and put that on, and then we'll start working on the other colors after that. The second most common color on the tank is the US Field Drab, so that'll be the next color that we put on. I've gone ahead and let the paint dry for a couple hours now. I didn't want to go too heavy on it because it appears to dry a little bit slower than the way the Tamiya does. So now that that's dried and we have a nice smooth coat of it, we're going to use our US sand to do a little bit of the highlighting on that. And lastly, we're going to do a little bit more, the last little bit of camouflage with the black. I've gone ahead and let the paint cure overnight, and then put a coat of dull coat on top of it to seal it in. So if any weathering we do on top won't be affected. Couple quick things. The paint lays down very, very nicely. It does take a little bit longer to dry than if you're used to doing with like the Tamiya colors. Also, you want to be very careful. You want to use a little bit lower pressure, I found too. I dialed it down to about 15, 16 pounds of pressure in my airbrush, and I found that if you don't and you get a little too close with it, you can sometimes ripple the paint just slightly because it wants to like blow away because it's not drying as fast. And although they are the air paints, I did have to put a little bit of thinner inside of it, a little acrylic thinner. I put in about 20%, so very similar to what you do with the Tamiya paint. I just found that it would flow a lot better through my airbrush. Each airbrush is going to vary, but that's what on mine. I thought a little bit of thinner really made it flow a lot better. I'm also going to take a little bit of this dark rust color, and we're just going to do a little tiny bit of chipping on some of the edges of the vehicle. Not too much, but just enough that it kind of breaks up the panels a little bit. And although it's called dark rust, it's really just a really dark brown, so it's not gonna look like it's rusted too badly. So I'm gonna go over more of the paneling on that, doing the rust. I just wanted to show you a little bit of the chipping on the outer skirts and in between each one of the skirt panels, and that how it starts to define each one of the pieces a little bit more. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish the entire vehicle like that. Now we're going to start doing some of our weathering on the outside here. Here I'm just applying a very thin coat of the desert dust wash into all the little nooks and crannies and along the bottom edge here, and just kind of randomly putting some of that on. We're going to kind of create a mud and dirt effect here. And then lightly we dip our brush inside the pigment powder, and that's the same mixture that we used on the tracks. I'm just going to start to create a layer of it down here on the bottom and anywhere in here. I was looking at some pictures online, and it's kind of hard to find some of these that aren't painted desert, but they do have quite a bit of dirt and grime and dust built up between the different panels and all of the little areas in there. So I'm going to go over the whole vehicle, start mainly on this side first to show you guys, let this dry and see how it turns out. And now I've gone ahead and put the tracks on, and you can see how this starts to dry, how it gives that kind of a dusty, dirty effect, but like a little bit of a clump to it. And it just kind of hides a little bit of the little chipping in there, but you can still see it pop through. One other step that you can take, using that same slurry of the desert dust and the light sienna, you can brush a little bit across the top here. Now this has been thinned down quite a bit as well with just regular water. And then after that, just taking your flat brush, kind of pull down just softly. And I'll flip this around, show you, because I kind of did this side already. And you can see how it starts to make some streaks going down the side. And you can blend those if they're too harsh or however you want to do it. Just keep messing around with it, but you can see how it's starting to leave the dirt streaks coming down. One more thing we're going to do to the top here is we're going to get our airbrush out, and we're going to spray the entire model just with a dusting from about 12 inches away of XF57 buff. And that's going to kind of give it that dust coat and lighten down all the paint just slightly. And one other step I'm going to take at the very end here, and we're going to take a little thinner on our flat brush and apply it inside some of these wheels first. And then we're going to use a little bit of the Vallejo streaking grime and kind of just blot it around the inside of the wheels. And this is going to work as a wash that is going to highlight some of the bolts and things like that. And if it gets a little too thick in some areas, just apply a little bit more thinner inside and it'll water it down. You got to do it though before it dries. Works out a lot easier that way. I like to, like I said, put the thinner down first because it makes it flow a lot better. And just touch it inside there. So I'm going to go over and do the wheels, all that areas, and then maybe even some of the little hinges and things like that with the wash. That'll make them pop out again. Okay, well here's the final reveal on the model. What I've done for probably about the last 50 minutes to an hour, I've been doing the exact same processes over and over again, but blending everything together to make everything a little bit more subtle. I know sometimes when you're watching the video, sometimes some of the stuff looks overdone, and it's just strictly because at that stage, it still hasn't been completely blended in with everything else. And I'll give you kind of a once over here and show you. Starting to blend everything together. Now I really like the way that all of the Vallejo products blended together with the acrylic paints, with all the acrylic weathering products. They worked really, really well. A couple of tips and pointers, we'll call them, when you're going to use the Vallejo paints. Like I said, I did have to thin them down a little bit, even though they say they're airbrush ready. I like my paint to flow a little bit more, and I had to dial down the air pressure slightly as well. And that's just because I'm used to based on using Tamiya paint. So your airbrush might vary a little bit. In fact, a good way to do it is just practice on the bottom of your tank. Get an idea how everything's going to flow together. But there it is. So I want to thank you very much for watching as always. I very much appreciate it. And please stay tuned because we have more videos coming.